Hey everyone, today we're going to take a look at one of the other Mikawa Nagura. In this case we have Koma Nagura. This is the last of the 4-step traditional Nagura process that is usually used for razors. So this one would come after Majiro. And these are really useful Nagura for knife polishing, sword polishing, or razor honing. And they have a really interesting history. All the Mikawa Nagura obviously have an interesting history, but the Koma Nagura in particular is one of the specific steps that you use in traditional sword sharpening. So this would come after the Chu Nagura step, and it would precede the Uchigamori step. And good Koma Nagura should show you either if you have any scratches remaining, this is usually the step it'll really come out in, or it should set you up if you don't have any preceding scratches and you've moved through a polishing progression well. It should show you that you have no errant scratches and are really ready to move on to the next step. These do work extremely well for razors too. They are kind of functioning a little bit as a pre-finisher for razors. In theory, you could shave off of one of these, but most people are not going to find that to be a particularly enjoyable experience. I will have a separate video where we go into these just for razor use, but today, as has been the case for the rest of the Mikawa Nagura bench stones that we've looked at, we'll be looking at it more from the perspective of knife polishing. Now, what these are known for amongst the Mikawa Naguras being rather fast-cutting versions of the Mikawa Nagura, while also being very fine. So they are known for having about similar fineness to Majiro. There's some debate about whether or not Majiro is finer than Koma, or Koma is finer than Majiro. Sakamoto, who is currently the one who owns who uses the Asano stamp and is releasing these Nagura as well as some of the bench ones, this one also is his stock, does say that Majiro is finer than Koma, but that Koma cuts faster. So, since you're not really finishing on it from a razor perspective, it not being the finest is fine. And more specifically for our uses today, what we should see is that it leaves a nice hazy near scratch finish, but that it really gets some work done comparatively. Now, when we look at this, I do have 2 of these, so we'll take a look at both of them in the same video. I do know from experience this one tends to be rather hard and needs quite a while to soak. This one is actually a lot newer to me. For those of you who watched the sealing video, the cashew lacquer sealing video, you know that this one is fairly new. And the impression I get is that it's a little softer than this, but still on the hard end of the Mikawa spectrum. So our previous other Nagura videos, we let the bench stones soak for about 5 minutes. I'm going to give these stones at least 15 minutes. And I do know, at least from this bigger one here, that will drastically improve it for polishing performance. That it really wants to be soaked and soften up just a little bit so that it can perform good for us. So I'm going to go ahead and get these soaking, and we will jump on into it when that's done. See you then. Alright, so we've soaked the stone now for about 20 minutes. The other one is still in the water soaking since we're not ready to use it yet. And as always with these stones, if you're going to soak them, make sure they're sealed on the sides and the back. That will help to avoid any cracking or any issues you might have. Also, before we went into soaking, we didn't really cover the 2 different Nagura that we have here. They are both Koma, that's upside down. They're both Koma Nagura, as you can see right here, which this orientation is actually this way. So you can see the Koma Nagura here. This is the old stamps version. This is the newer stamps version. Both are valid. You'll find a lot more of these. Sometimes you'll find these, they come in like old white, usually kind of moldy and decrepit boxes at this point. So on this guy, we're going to use our old one first, and I also do soak these as well. be enough to get us easily going. And just add a little bit of water. And as always, I try to show you guys what we're dealing with before we go in. Let's just get some of that off. So here's what we are working with in the polish department today. A fairly decent done job. I tried my best to get the majority of any rogue scratches out so that we can really try to see what the Koma does for us. Not the most perfect job, but it'll easily allow the Koma to shine here. So let's go ahead and begin. So I have always found that this particular Koma Nagura is much smoother feeling than the other Nagura. Not that the other Nagura aren't smooth, but this one is very smooth feeling to polish with. And you can see it is rather quick, as you would expect from Koma. Let's do a couple more rounds here. Kind of caught the shinogi line there. Alright, I think that'll be good enough to show us what we're working with. Now, looks pretty good. I missed the front here. Interesting. For now, I'm just going to leave it as is. I don't think it's absolutely essential for us to take a look. So when we're looking, you'll see this front area. It's probably just a little low from when I worked it. Just ignore that. But the rest of this is what we're dealing with for Koma. And if you really scrutinize it, there are definitely scratches there, but they're very light. And if we had any previous scratches, it would really show. Now, I think I did a pretty good job of cleaning this blade up outside of this little heel area before we jumped on into this. So a very nice polish overall. It went pretty quick, and this would be more than capable of setting us up for next stages, whether that is a Suida, a soft Tomai, Uchikamori, if we're going the more traditional sword route. This will get us to the point where we can see if we have any work left to do on the blade, and if we don't, then we can move on. Now, realistically speaking, Majiro can kind of fill in this role as well, but Koma is very nice to use for this purpose. So let's go ahead and swap out our primary bench stones here. And this probably isn't totally necessary, but when I have more than one of the same stone, it can be nice to take a look at variances and make sure we have a good idea of how different stones from the same category or lineage or what have you will perform. And I am going to use actually we'll use the matching. These are the previous two are both old Nagura. We'll match the new Nagura stamps. Now, if you use Nagura, benchstone or otherwise, it doesn't always slurry this fast. I keep the Nagura handheld and the Nagura benchstone conditioned on a very old but still fairly coarse Atoma 140. And then I smooth out both sides, right, by knowing that I'm going to use a, in this case, Koma Nagura on the Koma benchstone Nagura. So if you were using this to a significantly more refined grit, like a 1200, and then this was a 1200, right, rubbing them together is going to take a lot longer to generate this much slurry. But you can kind of speed that process up by conditioning both rather aggressively and rubbing them up together from there. It works rather well. So I think we're good to go. I'll try to get the front of this time. This one is definitely a little softer feeling. Again, not major, but you can tell when you put the blade on it just what it's doing, how the surface is refreshing. It's still very nice. And obviously also very quick. It'll give us, you can already tell, it'll be a bit more contrasty. The core and the cladding will have, I think, some deeper contrast than the other one, which makes sense. Usually softer stones at the same level are going to give you a bit more contrast. And then harder stones are going to frost, what they usually call frosting. It's going to frost the steels up a little bit more. Everything will be a little bit brighter. Neither is better than the other. It's a personal preference, what you want. And truth be told, with how difficult it is to get a bench-sized Koma, or how expensive it is, rather, Sakamoto does sell them rather frequently. Which you can find on Bai. You can find that link to Sakamoto's store on the Reputable seller pages on naturalwhetstones.com. I'm not affiliated with him. Excuse me. I'm not affiliated with him, but obviously I have purchased things from him and I'm satisfied. He does sell bench-sized Koma Nagura fairly frequently. Usually they'll either be like this guy here we're using, where they're wide and long but thin, or they'll be a little stubbier, but they'll be thicker. Of course, he does sell ones that are wide, long, and thick, but it's going to be very expensive to get those. Expect the bidding to go rather high. So let's go ahead and take a look here at how this guy did. Not quite dry yet. And also a very nice polish. We obviously do have a little low spot up here in the front. It can be really hard to show the individual qualities stone to stone. They're pretty equal in what they left here. Yeah, I don't think, we have a little bit of marks here, but those are not deep scratches. Those are just from probably where I let the stone get a little too dry, so it caught. If I ran back over them, they would go away. They're both very nice polishes. I also have had a lot more time with that first stone, so I know its intricacies a little bit more. It's very good. They're very useful for polishing. They really do a fantastic job of filling that role which is the transitional step from Nakatoishi, your middle grit stone, to your finishing or Uchigamori stone. Often, if you are using if you're using an Aizu or an Igarashi or a Numata, there are various Nakatoishi options that are around that 3,000 to 5,000 grit range. While those scratches for a good stone will still be very uniform, you will find that the Awaseda will take a very long time, or the Uchigamori will take a very long time to delete those scratches. But more than anything, rather than just taking a long time to delete the scratches, the Kasumi finish that a Awaseda or Uchigamori is going to leave has a possibility of covering up the scratches. And you don't want to do that because as you further refine that polish, those scratches will come through. So sometimes you can fool yourself into thinking you're done. Then as you progress on to your final stages, whether that's a powder you're using, or finger stones, or a harder bench stone, you will find, oh no, there were scratches there and I really needed to work them out. So this type of polish you get with a Koma or a Majiro can really show you if you have any underlying scratches, because while it is still a hazy finish, it's not that super dark hazy finish that we're going to get from, the darker, not super dark, but the darker, truly misty finish we're going to get from Uchigamori or a soft Homai or soft Suida. So this allows us to kind of check before we really move on to our final step and make sure that we are in fact ready to do so. Usually I use these as sharpening stones. I suppose we still can, to give everybody an idea of how quick they work. Really, I mean, the other stones, maybe like a Boten or a Tenju, I might consider, hey, you could use a knife on this. With Koma in particular, this will probably be the only time I do it, because they're costly, and they're best saved for either specifically polishing or razor work. And I usually keep mine for razor work. Realistically, almost all the Mikawa Nagura I have, I just allow to put aside for razor work. But I do pull them out every once in a while to polish with. The Koma, really had to make sure that I'm feeling prepared to do it, just because they're, again, so expensive to replace. And even this Koma, which is the bigger of the two, is a small piece compared to all the other Mikawa Nagura that you have seen in our other videos. So okay, we'll still go ahead and just sharpen with this, just to get an idea of speed. I find that while, sure, this is it's a faster Mikawa Nagura, it does not really show it nearly as much in this stage, right? This feels, I think, feedback-wise, visual-wise, the swarf we're generating, rather similar to our other stones that we've used so far. And as I kind of already said, I don't think that it's going to leave a good edge. That's it's a highly usable edge. It is right before too refined. Well, not too refined. It's right before what many people would consider is too refined. A lot of people want a little bit of teeth. They want that durability. And pretty much all the Mikawa Nagura offer you a really nice edge that's right on that border between losing its teeth and becoming a, razor, truly like razor sharp, and keeping just enough of it to where, this would blow through the majority of tasks you have and also remain rather durable throughout the process. So it's very nice for this purpose if you really wanted to, but similarly, I think any of the other Mikawa Nagura are going to be better off for you in a sharpening application. If that's what you're looking for, you'll get them cheaper, you'll get bigger blocks, but hey, if your funds are unlimited and you wanted one big Mikawa Nagura that you dropped a bunch of money on, or you made a big trade for or something, I suppose a Koma would of course do you rather well. So anyway, that is our Mikawa Koma Nagura. I hope that it was useful, and this will be the last of the Mikawa Nagura that we're going to cover in benchstone form, unless if I somehow get more of them later. We do have some other benchstone Nagura that we will cover in the future, that I'll cover in the future, and we will revisit all of these when I have a microscope and we can take a look at them specifically for how they impact the edge of a razor, so we can see what the progression looks like when you use benchstones and see what the progression looks like when you use handheld Nagura on an Awaseto. But until I have that setup ready, this will conclude the look at our bench Naguras for knife sharpening and knife polishing, and maybe they'll come back out for some head-to-heads or something like that in very future videos, but for now this concludes the Mikawa Nagura lineup. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If you liked it, like the video, and subscribing always helps as well. Thanks, until next time.